Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The GOAT Show, where we interview people that are arguably the greatest of all time at what they do. And today, I've got a guy seems to be a legend here, and I've heard of the guy over and over and over, and now I'm realizing that it's not just me. A lot of people have heard about this guy. He seems to be a guy, from when I ask everyone, what is he like, what's his thing, he's a guy that can get whatever he wants, and he's like a real-life Ray Donovan. That's kind of what I hear. And so now I've got him on the show. His name is Steve Sims, and I'm excited to learn more about him, exactly what he does, his book, which was called Bluefishing, right? I understand, and you got a great course, right, around it. And so now, Steve, I've got you here, and we're going to find out exactly what everyone's talking about. Why are they calling you the Ray Donovan, the real-life Ray Donovan? What's that about?
So I've ended up with many titles. Forbes called me the real-life Wizard of Oz. Entrepreneur said that I was the Make-A-Wish Foundation for people with really big checkbooks. Basically, for 25 plus years, I run the world's first and largest experiential concierge firm that only worked with billionaires. Literally, at our peak, we only had 93 clients, and 80% of them were billionaires. My clients own things like countries. And I was recruited by them to do things like send them into space, send them down to see the wreck of the Titanic with James Cameron, get them a golf lesson with Tiger Woods, get them a drum lesson with Guns N' Roses, get them a piano lesson with Elton John. I was the guy that if you could dream it, even partially, but more importantly, afford it, I was the guy that went forward and made it happen.
So I heard a story of somebody wanted to get married at a Vatican. It wasn't like it was a thing you couldn't do, and you made that happen too. Is this true?
Yeah, we had a client that said he's only going to get married once, and he wants to do it as grand as possible. So we worked with the Vatican and then had the Pope come in and bless him.
All right, so basically you have learned how to get whatever you want, and is that what Bluefishing is about?
Yeah, I've got to give you the context.
Great.
Because I don't want people to get caught up in the fact. I don't want them to get caught up thinking that I'm a really good networker that's really good with people and really good at being a concierge. No, I was a bricklayer from London who wanted to deal with rich people. And the reason I wanted to deal with rich people, because I knew what it was like to be poor, because I was poor. And I wanted to get to, and just like we were saying earlier, I wanted to be able to hang around in a room with affluent, successful people to find out, how do you think? How do you tick? How do you perceive problems and how do you work? Because then maybe I can emulate it and be rich. Along the way, I tried to do party planning, party promoting, and then people were like, oh, can you get me this? And can you get me this, this celebrity? The only reason I did any of that was to be able to be in a room with a rich person. So that was the sole reason. It was almost, as I used to say, my Trojan horse. I would come through the door saying, hey, I can get you anything you want. If you want Beyonce at your barbecue party, done. If you want to, sleep one night in a pyramid in Egypt, done. But it was always a Trojan horse for me to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you and go, hey, Mike, so how did you start? How do you do that? And that was the real reason behind it. So along the way, Bluefishing just became, which was the name of the company, Bluefishing just became a mentality. How do people do things? How do people perceive things? Because believe it or not, and you know this, Mike, successful people look at things differently. And they view things differently, and they focus on things differently, and they take value in different things. And they are different people. So you need to be able to get into that circle to understand it. So Bluefishing was a mindset that I adopted and learned about and then put in the book 3 years ago.
Why is it called Bluefish? How'd you come up with that name?
So I used to, when I started throwing parties, I only wanted rich people to attend. So the way that I would do this, and we learned these things along the way, but it was a genius move that I didn't know was genius at the time. We would fax, because bear in mind, this was the early 90s. We didn't have email. We would fax all of the most affluent people in the area going, hey, there's a secret party on Friday night. Let me know if you want to go, and I'll let you know the details. Now, we didn't know the location. because I didn't know how many people would say yes. I didn't want to get a place that could look after 200 and only have 20 people. And I remember the first party I threw, 12 people turned up. So we ended up taking over like a restaurant and, in the back. So I would lead first with requirement and then go and satisfy that. And the way that it worked was I would give you the location, but when you turned up, you had to give me this password. And every week, every month, we would give you a different password. But in the end, they started to get repetitive. And we realized that if we made people smile before they walked through the door, we got rid of 99% of the problem. So the passwords were always silly. And it'd be things like, name 2 of the Teletubbies. And another one that we did was finish this sentence, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish. And of course, it's Bluefish. But here was the hardest password that we had. We would say to people, the password is the name of the lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so people would come up to us, just like your face. People would come up to us and they'd be like, oh, because I was the doorman on my party, and they would come up to me and they'd be like, is it lion? And of course it's not. And for anyone out there upset, it's Aslan.
Okay? Is it?
Yeah, it's Aslan. Wow. So, but the funny thing is, we would get people come up to us and go, we're here for the party. And I'd look at my mate, and there's a party going on behind us. We've got all the pretty people. We'd be on a yacht, or we'd be on a penthouse, or in a mansion, and we'd be like, I don't think there's a party here, mate. And he's like, yeah, I'm here for the party. And because he wouldn't say the password, we would basically take the piss out of him and then kick him away. And everyone else just found it funny. But we kept using the word Bluefish. And so people started contacting us going, oh, are you that Bluefish company? And honestly, we had no idea what they were talking about until my secretary turned around and went, that's one of your passwords for your parties. That's why they think you're called Blue. So we did a name change and we called ourselves Bluefish and got into the experiential world.
You really turned people away that you invited, knowing you invited them, but they didn't know the password, so you let them
know?
No,
it gets worse than this. It gets worse than this. Because we were throwing parties and we had alcohol in them, we actually got threatened to be shut down. So this guy came over and met me and he said to me, you need to apply for a liquor license. And I said, well, I've got a party next Friday. How long does that take? He went, 6 to 12 months. And I'm like, I can't wait 6 to 12 months. He's like, well, don't sell alcohol. And I went, hang on. What do you mean don't sell alcohol? So you're not moaning about the alcohol. You're moaning about me selling it. So he went, yeah, that's right. So when I first started throwing parties, they were $200 to get into the party, okay? Which isn't a cheap price to get into a nightclub, Right. You pay $200, you got to think about it,
Yeah.
I put the price up to $1,000 and all the drink and food was free. Now I was giving the drink away for free. I didn't need a liquor license.
Yeah, and you made more than you would have made by selling alcohol because you're not drinking $800 in it.
You're not, but you're also weeding out the people that can't afford $1,000.
Yeah.
So I straight away went for, and I had built up to like a good, 80 to like 200 people turning up. Second I started charging $1,000, it shot down to like 40 to 60 people turning up. Right. But then it started building up. And so I was making good money. Everyone in that room could afford $1,000. So even if you turned up and you acted like a prick on my front door and I turned you away, not only was I turning you away, but I'd also charged you. So the following day, I would refund your money. And I would refund them and go, look, we're very particular about our door. And if anyone's out there as an entrepreneur thinking about this, something that rang true about that I didn't realize. Now, you're a big guy, Mike, you know? As big as we are, no one likes fighting. And I was the doorman. I grew up, I was a doorman. I didn't like fighting, but that's what my job was. But if I could control who came through the front door, I controlled what happened inside. So if a guy had a few drinks in him and seemed a bit leery at the front door, if I refused him access, I avoided the fight inside. So as an entrepreneur, guard who comes through your front door. Look at the client. Don't look at the invoice or checkbook. make sure you get the right people in rather than the rich people in. And there was a big difference, and luckily we got it right. So we never had any trouble. Lots of people would beg to come in. If I turned you away, I said, look, you're going to love this, we have a prick policy. We literally told people we have a prick policy. If you turn up at the door and you act like a prick, we send you away. If you're a cool cat, you can come on in. So we had people coming back like a couple of weeks later going, sorry about that, Stephen. I'd be like, hey, you're cool. Do you know the password? And they would say it and we'd let them in.
I love it. I wrote down some ideas because I'm for sure going to see how I can incorporate some of this. This is a good idea. Also, I got to call out, I appreciate you calling me a big guy. This is what the benefits of Zoom meetings are. Is you can't tell I'm 5'7", but my video producer, who's a female, she's like 20 feet tall. She's loving every minute of this, laughing because she's taller than I am.
But there you go. You're on a little pedestal there, so that's good enough for me.
All about camera angles, Steve.
Yeah, no, I need to speak to you to get one that makes me look thinner.
I don't have one for that yet, but when I need it, I'll find it, and McKenna will help me out. All right. So what I want to know is a lot of the skill sets that you have. You know, call it people skills, research skills, creativity skills. How have you helped other businesses apply that to their companies or their life in order to be more successful? Because, you know, I'm already starting to write down some ideas, but something tells me that I can learn so much from you to make my business stronger and better, and the people listening and watching as well could too. So you have any stories where somebody's like, Steve, I picked this up from you, or I learned this from you, and now this has helped me as well, just so I can see parallels?
Yeah. So as all entrepreneurs, we get imposter syndrome. And we get doubt, and we get into a room and we think, oh my God, how the hell am I in this room? Everyone else is so more successful, more powerful. You know, these people are fantastic and I'm not. I didn't kind of have that because I grew up in a bricklaying family in the 80s. So I didn't have Instagram to tell me how inadequate my life was. I also didn't have access to books to tell me about what I should do and how I should. So I led a very ignorant life. And the funny thing about ignorance is it also removes fear from you. So I would go through life and I'd be like, well, I need this. I'm going to go and get it. And I'd go and get it. I suddenly realized along the way, I was achieving a lot more. But those people that would sit there and go, oh, I can't do that. Maybe I'm not sure I can do that. That hesitation would create the paralysis to stop them going forward. Now, as business owners, we screw up and fail 90% of the time. But that 10% of the time that we are successful makes up for all of those times we failed. Okay? And so along the way, I was looking at it and go, well, I lost out there. Where did I lose out? See, I always looked at all of my losses and my refusals as education on what not to do. Okay? These were educations. They were not failures. They were there to refine me and not define me. So I had this ignorance to just go forward and try these things. I didn't have any fear behind me. And then I started achieving. I was going through this entire business for 25 years. And I've worked with everyone from Sir Elton John to Elon Musk to the Pope. And it was about 3 years ago, I was in a party in New York. Someone was telling some story about me to someone. The lady came over and she said, hey, I work at Simon & Schuster. I didn't know who they were. Just happened to be the largest publishing company in America. And they said, you need to write a book on the people you deal with. Now, about 15% of my clients are famous people that you would know of. The rest of them own islands, banks, countries, you know, that you've never heard of, just happen to be worth billions. Okay. In fact, I like looking at the Forbes rich list and going, yep, doing that kind of thing. And I said to him, if I wrote a book on all the clients I dealt with, I'd be dead before cocktail hour. So I can't do that. So then they said, well, okay. And we got talking and they said, how do you do this? And then they came back to me a week later and they actually sent me an email and they said, look, after speaking with you, we want to know how a bricklayer from London that left school at the age of 15 has been able to achieve all of these things. And it was funny because if anyone ever gets an email from me, they know I can't spell. Okay, punctuation, can't do it at all. I thought the chance of me writing a book would be funny for my kids. I wanted to do it, and if anyone's got kids, we know we like to humiliate them. That's the point of having kids. So I wanted to write this book just so I could say to my kids, yeah, your dad's an author, and just to aggravate them. So we did this ghostwriting, and we wrote this book, and we went through it, and books are very revealing. They really start to dig into it. And the ghostwriter, it was like being intensely interviewed. And I would say to them, and entrepreneurs need to be aware of this, I would say to them, oh, I did this, and then I did this. And we noticed something. It's never the big thing that's the thing that you go, whoa. It's the little steps along the way that people don't think about.
Right.
And so when the book came out, it suddenly exposed the most raw, impactful, stupid, and silly things that work the most. And I was never sending someone a magnum of vintage champagne or seducing them with a meal out on it. I was never doing any of that. But I was getting the most powerful people in the world to work with me and for me in looking after these amazing clients. And I was always pulling it off. So when the book came out, people were like, hang on a minute. You know, there's nothing hard to understand. There's nothing difficult in here. But the funny thing about entrepreneurs, they like to spend money to outsource the problem. And they look at it and they go, whoa, I'm going to launch a company. Whoa, I better get a 60 grand CRM. I better get this website done. I better pixelate it, and I better get a click funnel campaign on there, and I better rewrite. No. You need to know that you are the solution to somebody's problem. Find someone that's got that problem. Validate you are the solution. Repeat. If you can repeat it up to 3 times, you're in business. Then get the CRM. To the point that when we released this book, and I've got a little copy of it here because I did an interview with it earlier. When we released this book, I didn't even have a website. And I didn't have the website because I thought no one's going to believe it. It's now been translated into Mandarin Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese.
Wow.
It's sold out in Poland, all of its printed copies in 2 hours. And now it's being translated into Russian as well. So, you know, it's kind of just gone crazy. But I wanted to install in people, don't overthink. And you mentioned Jay Abraham before this conversation. He's a neighbor of mine. He always says that I have a greater I can than an IQ. And I go forward. Even if I'm going in the right direction, I start the momentum towards what I'm hoping my goal is.
I love it. I love it. So what do you have in your business right now? How many employees do you have?
In my business now, which is predominantly the marketing and the branding for this new company we've got, we have 3.
3? And what does this company ultimately do? Like, why do people come to you, this new company?
So we have stevedsims.com, which basically helps people get out of their mindset, get out of the way of them thinking, starting to go for stupid, and I'll explain that in a second, but really focusing on what they want to do and then routing how to get there, how to do influencer marketing, how to get onto podcasts, how to get the appropriate media, how to get into the right sandpit, how to define what solution it is you provide. Because a lot of people think they do something, and then when you speak to them, you end up realizing that what they do is actually something slightly different. And so you have to tweak the message in order to make your message crystal clear, because the big C in business, you know, we all know what big C in life is. It's cancer. The big C in business is confusion. And a lot of people confused. If you want a little freebie, do this as a little trick. Anyone that's got and I suggest you do it on a big screen, not on an iPhone. On your computer, open up all of your social feeds. You know, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your Tinder account, whatever. You open up all your social feeds. Look at the bio and the picture on every single one. And they go on LinkedIn and they're all buttoned up, looking sharp, and the bio looks good. And it gets over to Facebook and it's girls gone wild. You know, all of a sudden they're sitting there on a beach in a Mai Tai. People think social platforms are different. They're not. It's like reading the news or watching the news. If I said to you, oh, tonight, 6 o'clock, what news station are you watching? Regardless of what news station you're watching, it's the same news.
Yeah.
So people prefer LinkedIn over Twitter or over Instagram or Facebook over one of the... So the bottom line of it is your bio and picture should be the exact same on every single platform. Do you think Nike changes their bio on different platforms? Do you think Apple changes their bio? No.
Right,
so the first thing we do when we work with a client is we focus on the clarity to avoid confusion and therefore allow the client and his service to become impossible to misunderstand.
I love it. You know, one of the people that you mentioned earlier that I think has such clarity on his mission in this world, he really, like, everyone knows, when you think of him, you know exactly what he's here to do, and that's Elon Musk. And you said you got a chance to spend a little time with him, is that right?
Yeah, a few times, yeah. I've been very fortunate with that.
I mean, I feel like the whole time I hang out with him, I talk as little as possible and just ask questions, like real big open-ended questions. So what are some things that you took away from your meeting with him that made you think about, was there anything that made you think about certain things a little different, or does you see him as a certain way that you maybe didn't see when you were not as close to him? What was that like?
So the way people look at problems says a lot about their mindset. And we had an event in SpaceX down in Hawthorne, and we had literally 30 people in there. We had 30 people in there to meet Elon, and I think there was something like about an 80-person security detail because each one of them had their own security. It was insane how powerful these people were. We actually, for some of these people that had come into the States, we had them in hotels under pseudonyms because they were so powerful in their home country. That's the standard of people that we had that we brought in to meet Elon Musk at SpaceX. And Elon was going to come in and meet them all and talk about the things that he was getting up to. So I'm sat there in the room, and it's all set up and everything, and the assistant came over and they went, Elon's ready. So I had to go through SpaceX, go into Elon's room, chat with him, and, let him know what was going on, the dynamics of the people, and then walk him back through SpaceX into the room, and he would start his presentation. So I had two of my top clients with me at the time, and I went, I've got to go and get Elon. Do you want to come with me? Of course, they're going to go, yeah, we do. So I took him over to meet Elon. We had a little chat, and then we're walking through SpaceX. And as we're walking through, there's Elon on my right, there's me, and my two clients on my left. The closest client to me, Robert, he wasn't saying anything. He was just in awe that he's walking through SpaceX with Elon Musk. Next to him, Jimmy wouldn't shut up. Was like a kid on steroids. Was like, so Mr. Musk, how do you feel about this? And where do you see this guy? Was just high as a kite on excitement. And it was getting close to the point where I was going to have to go, Jim, shut it, calm down a bit, And Jimmy was trying to bait Elon into a conversation. And if you ever meet Elon, or any of you out there ever get to meet Elon, he's not a real conversational guy. He's very careful with the words he speaks, and he's not a chit-chatty kind of fella, okay? And so as he's walking down, he's not saying anything. The occasional kind of, not really saying much. Jimmy decides to come out with a banger of a question. This was just before NASA and SpaceX started working together. Now, if anyone remembers that time frame, NASA publicly used to humiliate Elon and a civilian within the space industry. They used to publicly ridicule it, saying there is no space for the civilians in this industry. We know what we're doing. Please go back to your banking. They were quite vicious in some of their tweets and stuff.
Right.
So Jimmy turned around and said, how do you feel about NASA, publicly ridiculing you? And this was the only thing that caught Elon. And without missing a step or a beat, or without even looking at Jimmy, he turned around and said, don't worry about it. They always laugh just before they applaud. Mic drop.
Wow.
And that's why when we go for something, and I'll tell you a story, if you let me, about Florence in a minute. I, from that day, from that moment, started going for stupid. And I mentioned it earlier in here. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, you've got to go for the impossible? Go for the impossible and break it. Have you ever heard that statement?
Yeah, all the time.
So what does the word impossible represent?
Something that can't be done.
So why would we go for something that can't be done? Our mindset, that's a confusion, isn't it? Go for something that's not possible. Go for something that can't be done. That's kind of like this weird oxymoron of a mindset. Right. So what I decided from that day with Elon, I'm going to go for stupid. I'm going to go for something so ridiculous every single time I can that I could be laughed at. And then if I fail, and this is the beautiful thing about overstretching, if you fail, on the way back you achieve 3,000% more than what you would have caught if you'd have gone for what was achievable. So in my head,
I love that.
Possible, remove that word out of your vocabulary. Go for something so ridiculous. If you've got a goal in your head, treble it and have someone laugh at you for that goal, and then go for that one. When they start laughing at you, that's the one you got to go for.
I love it. I love it. Who would you say, with all the people that you've met, obviously Elon Musk is probably up there. You've gotten to meet the Pope and some billionaires. What would you say are a couple other lessons? Because I'm sure you've got so many random quotes. What are some other lessons that you've learned and you're like, man, I'm applying that? Or man, my whole way of looking at something is different.
Yeah, there's a few people that came in. Richard Branson.
Okay.
I loved it when he was speaking to me about being a quitter. Now, everyone's got kind of different kind of perspectives on different people. And it was really funny to have a conversation with Richard on being a quitter. And I said to him, look, there's many things I know about you. You're a showman, you're a showboat, you love the attention, but I'd have never called you a quitter. And he said that he gets in quick to something he's passionate about, but he's learned to recognize when it's not getting traction quicker, and he's quick to quit on that project. And that was something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. How many times you get an entrepreneur going, well, if I could just sink another $10,000 in it, if I could just do $100,000 worth of Facebook ads, if I could just do this, we'd get over this hump. Richard looks at something and goes, well, look, we gave it some effort. It's not going. Let's take that effort. And one of the things he taught me was, we've only got a certain amount of energy. We've only got a certain amount. So I focus on what I call the ROE, not the ROI. That will come regardless. ROE. What is the return on my energy? If I'm exerting a lot of energy in this project and it's wearing me out, and you know what entrepreneurs are like. There's a standing joke. How's the easiest way to make an entrepreneur go bankrupt? You go up to them and you say, hey, I bet you couldn't do this for $10. And the entrepreneur will be like, yeah, I can, and they don't look at it. So quite often we go crazy because we need to succeed when quite simply it's not going to happen. So I learned the ability to quit and focus on my ROE from Richard. But one of the other things I really enjoyed was from John Paul DeJoria, who did Patron and Paul Mitchell hair products. And I liked the way that he tried to recruit people rather than resumes. And he was always very much about, I want to know the person can fit in the family. He was always about get a family working together and not get a bunch of resumes and hope they all. So we always wanted to know about the person and would literally take them out and have a coffee with them, outside of the office. He was very personable and he focused on the personality and the trait of the person coming into not his workforce, into his family. And that made a big switch on me.
That's awesome. I'm writing all this stuff down. I like the quick to quit a project because I think you're right. And it's not even a company in itself, but sometimes it's like an idea within the company or something you see so clearly it's going to work until all of a sudden it doesn't. And then you're like, okay, maybe it's not worth it, And Roland Frazier's a guy I just did that for me yesterday. I'm sure you know Roland because you're part of the Genius Network group as well. I know he's
I actually spoke at Roland and with Roland, Perry, and Ryan at their annual event down in Mexico. I think this time 2 years ago or last year. So yeah, I know those boys very well.
Love it, love it. So I'm looking at investing in a few different businesses, all in the health and fitness world, as that's where I'm in. That's where I can control the results a lot more if I build a good team and use my team to really help them. And so I get on the phone with him with 3 different opportunities. I'm like, hey man, I wanted to get your thoughts on these 3. And the one that I was the most excited about, he made me realize I need to quit that real quick. And there were just a certain way that I would have learned everything he told me was wrong with it once I was in it. And hopefully I'd have quit it then, but I would have had chips in already. And I feel like then you start playing on tilt. Anybody that knows poker, you know what playing on tilt is. Now all of a sudden your emotions are making decisions versus the data and the stats and what everything's telling you. And so it was great to be able to quit it before I started it, but I think that's a really big thing that same thing. You think a guy like Richard Branson, you don't tie him to be a quitter, but there's a difference between quitting on your dreams and quitting smoking, and depending on how you use the word quit, it could be good. It just depends on if it's what you're quitting is good for you or bad for you. Awesome. So let's talk about the course, because I know you got a course, and I don't know if you have other things like that as well. But Vince Reed was telling me about the course, and he said it's his awesome course. He got to go through it because he got to help in some fashion. He's
filmed the whole thing. He did. Yeah, we got lucky, but I think we all need that. 2 years ago, pre-COVID, we put the course through. Vince put the whole thing together. We put it through on a platform with Bradley. It looked absolutely fantastic. The filming, the lessons, the course material. It was fantastic, but I didn't like it. Now, this was nothing against Vince or Brad. They did a fantastic program. The reason I didn't like it, it was the diet book syndrome. People that go, and you know about this through fitness, people will buy membership to a gym and then think, well, that'll make me fitter. They won't actually do any work, but just because they're a member now, they'll think, yeah, I've made the right step. While they don't realize the right step's actually stepping in the gym. So we put this course together, and I felt that it wasn't holding anyone accountable. So it's called Sims Distillery. We decided to hold people accountable by doing regular AMAs. And so twice a month, we have an expert. We've had Jay Abraham, Jim Quick, Ari Mizell, Jeffrey Madoff, a whole bunch of people, Joe Polish. And we have these live expert AMAs, Ask Me Anything. So twice a month, all the members of the Sims Distillery, we jump on a big Zoom call on the private Facebook page, talk about what's going on at the moment, and then have these experts answer our members' questions. So rather than just being a static course where you join, piss off, do the work yourself, we actually have built up a community. So we took the word course off about a year and a half ago, and we have it down as the Inner Circle community at simsdistillery.com. So that's how we focused on it.
You know, I really love that. And what is I get the concept now, but what does AMA stand for? I feel like an idiot asking, but now I'm going to ask.
Do you know? No, I'm with AMA is Ask Me Anything.
Got it. Okay. See, I would use Q&A, but AMA is the same thing. I get it now. Okay, good. So I love that. And actually, we have the same thing. We've got a course, and now we started doing consultants. But I love the idea of bringing in live extras. We actually did it once during the first month when the pandemic hit. You know, morale was down for a lot of folks, especially in the fitness space, right? Because you had to close down. And we brought in Dominic Cruz. You know who Dominic Cruz is?
I know the name, don't know him personally.
He's two-time UFC champion, and his mentality around life in general is just so good. Like he's always, yes, I can, and here's how I will. You know, like that's his mentality. And so I brought him in to come and speak, and we had a full house virtually, and it was really great. People took a lot away from it, and you'd think I'd learn from that and say we should do more of that. And I didn't. Now that you're bringing it up, see, this is why I do these calls. Now I'm realizing I already know what to do. I just forget that I know it, and then I talk to you, and then I get both.
That's the point, and that's how I've actually said to people that if they buy the book, it's going to piss you off. If you buy Bluefish, it's going to piss you off because there's going to be chapters in there where you go, I used to do that, but then I stopped.
Right.
And you'll ask yourself why.
Right.
So that's the whole. You basically explained it in a nutshell. The stuff that works, continue to do, and the stuff that works is communication, showing up, providing value. All of those things work, and so stop looking for the fancy shiny object.
I love it. I love it. Well, Steve, before we hop off here, is there anything else that you think I should have asked you in order to really get the most out of a Steve Sims for the audience? What did I miss that you're like, man, if you had asked me that one, he'd have got some good stuff?
God, I don't know. We went through everything that needs to be done. We could talk for bloody hours, and hopefully in the future we will. But no, I think you've got some people. I think the keys there are do things that work, not things that look pretty. I used to run something called ugly marketing. I very much focus on ugly stuff works better than the stuff that's supposed to look perfect. But no, just really guard your front door. When you're looking at your clients coming in, look at the client and don't look at that checkbook. If you can control who comes through your front door, you remove 99% problems once they're inside.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for everybody watching, everybody listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.